So this has been a strange war in a number of ways. One of them is the disinformation, the strange type of disinformation, which could be expected living in the era of social media, and AI has provided all kinds of new ways for people to misrepresent what is going on. So we've seen footage of Tel Aviv in flames, which is of course nonsense. We've heard all sorts of fake news reports about Prime Minister Netanyahu, which are of course nonsense, and more. So there's a lot of strange stuff going on in this war. And I recently saw a great video, a great update by Victor Davis Hanson, the great military historian and public intellectual, and he puts out these short videos for the Daily Signal. And he talked about this aspect of the war. And I want to watch that video, and I have a few things to say about it when we come back after the clip. But before we get into that, please make sure to go to Israel365charity.com, Israel365charity.com. I believe the link should be in the description of this video. If not, just type that in, Israel365charity.com. Click on Israel Under Fire, and your donation will go directly to all kinds of needs that are happening on the ground. Israel 365 is very well connected with charities that are helping families that are struggling with a whole range of issues that are the result of this war with Iran. So please go ahead and do that. It's a great way for you to participate and help out with the nation of Israel at this difficult time. All right, let's get on with Victor Davis Hanson from the other day.
Hello, this is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. We're in the second week, just completing it, of the so-called Iran war, this effort of the United States to bomb the theocracy into submission so they will cancel their missile and nuclear programs, and to champion the popular protest on the streets that have some potential to get rid of the regime itself. But it's a very surreal war. I don't think any of us have seen anything like it. It's only been 2 weeks, and we're told that it's dragging on, that it's a forever war, that we're losing, that the Pentagon and the Trump administration had no plans. And yet, when you look at Iran, this huge country, much bigger, much more populous than Iraq or Afghanistan, and it has no military left. The Navy is dismantled. The Air Force is dismantled. The Republican Guard, all of these special contingents are under enormous assault. The command and control is destroyed. The missile defense is destroyed. And yet people say that it's unconquerable. It doesn't make any sense. Its output of missiles and drones at the Gulf petrol states and Israel has dropped by 90%. So what's going on? And I think part of the problem is that there's no media coverage. There are no embedded reporters there, because we are not on the ground. When you don't have a ground fight in enemy territory, you don't have American embedded journalists traveling with the troops that can give diverse opinions, accurate accounts. All we have are the journalists who are allowed into Iran. And that happens to be, guess who? CNN. And they report the party line that comes out of the Iranian theocracy. Again, an air war is very hard to cover because pilots can't talk to anybody. They're at bases that are secluded and secure. They get in the planes, they fly their mission, and they go home. And there's no way a journalist can really get to them or talk to them. So all of our information comes from 3 sources. The Iranian propaganda machine, which is completely not credible. It's about as credible as the Hamas body count that we saw 2 years ago. Or CNN and a few other Western but very biased news outlets that only Iran will let in based on the conditions which they impose on them, and the Israelis. And the only thing you can find out about this war that's official comes from the Israeli government and some Israeli newspapers, the Israeli Times or Israel Times or the Jerusalem Post. So there's a lot of misinformation about the actual damage that we're inflicting. And then there's the attitude toward the war. The attitude. In World War II, everybody was behind the United States. We did a lot of things that we regretted. The Japanese internment, We made a lot of mistakes strategically. Okinawa, Tarawa were disasters. The B-17 bombing program cost 40,000, but everybody's basically said we don't have to be perfect to be good. We're going to win our war because our cause is better than the alternative. That's gone now. It's gone. Even in the first Gulf War of 1990-91, people were united. But the Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of Bill Clinton. It's a socialist party. That's a euphemism. It really does not believe in traditional America. And it believes that if it can convey a sense that America is losing, then two things follow it. For some, it means that the November midterms might give power back to the Democrats, and therefore it's in their self-interest to magnify the debacle, so to speak, or the tragedy, or that we're losing. And then there's others that actually in the Democratic Party, and I'm talking about the Squad, or they actually are sympathizing with the enemy. If you think I'm crazy, there was a protest out in New York where we had resident aliens, students here on student visa, naturalized citizens. And what were they screaming? Shame on the United States. Why we're at war. And who were they protesting on behalf of? Iran, the Hezbollah people, terrorists, and the Hamas terrorists. And so this is a very bizarre thing. And in addition to that, we've got the element of anti-Semitism, where we have the Democratic Party now, its base is just unavowedly anti-Semitic. And I'll just make a casual observation. I will predict that you will not have a Jewish American presidential candidate, or vice presidential candidate for the foreseeable future. It is impossible to nominate anybody with a Jewish background on a national ticket in the Democratic Party. And you can see that as the Democrats look at this war. They have bought hook, line, and sinker the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu is pulling the strings of the Donald Trump puppet, and tiny Israel is getting into this war, despite the fact that all 7 prior presidents to Trump himself said on the record that Iran would not get a nuclear weapon on its watch, and that they would take measures to ensure that it didn't, and didn't for the future. None of them did that. None of them did that. And so when you look at the first Gulf War, it was 42 days, but only 4 days were on the ground. It was a magnificent victory, but 300 people were killed. We've lost about 13 fatalities. 300. That was considered amazing at the time. And they overran the country, but it took 42 days to disable it. And they left Saddam Hussein in power, and they had to go back. And so that was considered a stellar success. But this is a much more dramatic victory. I mean, we've only been here 2 weeks, and the much more formidable enemy is in shambles, and we're left with just three alternatives. Either the regime is going to be replaced now or in the next few weeks, as the people come out of their homes and see what their country is like, and what the theocracy caused and what it did to them. Or there's going to be some Venezuelan solution with a strongman who will come forward. Or maybe that won't happen at all, and the United States, under political pressure, will stop. But if it stops, they have destroyed the Iranian military and its nuclear and missile program for years. So this was all preferable to the situation pre-war, in which Iran still was working on the bomb, still had 3,000 missiles and more drones, and was boasting that it was going to, anytime it wanted, close the Straits of Hormuz. And they've tried it, and they will not be successful. Put it all together, this is a surreal war. What is actually happening is not being reported, and there's an alternate reality that's been constructed by the left that sees this war as politically advantageous to its agenda to recapture power in the United States. If it convince us, the American people, that A, we're losing, B, we may deserve to lose, C, it's all Donald Trump's fault, and this war will be beneficial in denying him the Republican majorities in Congress in about 8 months. Thank you very much.
Okay, so he makes a couple of important points in this video, and I just want to go through a few of my own observations. First, I'm sorry to disagree slightly with Victor Davis Hanson. It's not just coming from the left. The criticisms of the Trump administration for this war are also coming from the right. In fact, there's a lot of voices on the right that are also seemingly rooting for American defeat and getting all impatient. Now, he also, the point he raises about the fact that it's not being well covered in journalism because there's no ground offensive, so there's no embedded reporters, is a very interesting one. And what it's led to is that social media and all of the spitting contests back and forth on social media have become a large part of the way the war is covered, and that's filled with all kinds of disinformation. And the past wars he talks about, where you have embedded journalists in American wars, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or certainly anything before, you didn't have social media, so you didn't have that aspect either. But I think what he's pointing to in saying, like people, we've only been at this for a couple of weeks, and a much more formidable nation than Iraq or Afghanistan is decimated, much larger, much more formidable, and that's all true. And yet people are looking at this like, oh my gosh, it's a forever war. And I think what he's pointing to is a kind of impatience that people have these days. We live in a, instant gratification society. People want things to move quickly. They're used to watching a Netflix series or, some sort of TV show. And why isn't this progressing quicker? What's the exit strategy? Well, you don't know yet what the exit strategy is, and you don't even have to have an exit strategy yet. Let things progress. Let's see where things go. Does the regime fall? Does it not fall? As Israel and the U.S. continues to degrade Iran's governing capabilities, what does that look like? You can make decisions as you go. You can have an overall goal without having the entire thing mapped out. So a lot of the criticisms of the war are stemming from a kind of, I would say, immaturity. It's almost infantile, this kind of impatience, like, hey, why isn't this thing over yet? How come the people aren't in the streets yet? Well, the people shouldn't be in the streets yet. They should, if with every passing day the regime is getting weaker, then wait as long as you can. That's probably the best course of action. Wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. The worst thing that could happen is the people coming out into the streets and getting mowed down by whatever remains of the Basij and the IRGC. The worst thing that could happen is the people rise up again and fail because the regime still has enough strength to suppress the protests. So if with every passing day the regime is getting weaker, there's absolutely no advantage to them coming out, except all the armchair people sitting in front of their laptops with their popcorn or looking at their phones are eager for, to get on with it. They want to see the next stage of this. They want to see the regime fall, and it's taking too long. They want to fast forward. It's not the way it works. So yeah, I agree. It's a very strange war, and the criticisms are really just losing the forest for the trees. There's a lot of reasons to see this as a stunning success thus far, even though we don't necessarily know 100% how it's going to work out. Now, I want to show you an example of this criticism from the right. Let me show you an example of this, and this is from the American Conservative. The American Conservative is a publication that was started by Pat Buchanan back in the day. Very, isolationist, right-wing, very anti-Israel, and it still has that legacy today. It's now run by a couple guys who are harsh critics of Israel, even, very anti-Israel voices on the right. Most notable among them, from my perspective, is Kurt Mills. He appears a lot on Bannon's War Room, where I also appear. I tend to be the only consistent pro-Israel voice that is brought on there, and Mills will always take the other side. But this piece here on the American Conservative was published last week, and the title of it is "The Madness of King Trump. The President has pursued a policy of war and plunder." The president has pursued a policy of war and plunder. President Trump did not start any wars in his first term. And in his second term, his military actions have been short and decisive. And then you get to the Iran one. Now, Iran is a big deal. It's a very large country, very entrenched. It's a completely different ballgame from Venezuela or Iraq or Afghanistan, for that matter, or these smaller issues. And yes, it's a bigger enterprise. And they talk about it in this piece. This piece is written by a guy named Doug Bando. And he's talking about how terrible it is that we're getting into this expanded war. But I just want to jump to the end and really get the feel for it from the way he ends the piece here. A decade ago, candidate Trump denounced, quote, a reckless, rudderless, and aimless foreign policy, one that has blazed the path of destruction in its wake, end quote. He highlighted his opposition to the invasion of Iraq, promising that, quote, unlike other candidates for the presidency, war and aggression will not be my first instinct. You cannot have a foreign policy without diplomacy. A superpower understands that caution and restraint are really, truly signs of strength. Alas, his policy has become one of careless and callous brutality, with his ambition bounded by neither morality nor principle. He has become a threat to global peace, killing prodigiously while setting the entire region on fire, and doing so for no recognizable U.S. interest. Ultimately, he is likely to prove more dangerous to Americans than anyone else. This is coming from the right. Doug Bando is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and a former special assistant to Ronald Reagan. Okay, so this is a guy on the right, and he's writing about how this callous brutality and murder, and so many people are being killed in this war. I think he says near the beginning of it, so far, some 1,200 civilians, including more than 660 children, have been killed by American and Israeli action. How does he know that? Where does he get this from? You know where he gets it from? Check it out. I'm going to click on this link. You ready? Here it goes. Al Jazeera. He's quoting Al Jazeera. This guy, that's where he gets his numbers from to make Trump look bad. Okay? This shows you how far the right has gone in America, the isolationist right. Now, just because you believe in a just war, you believe that there's a reason to go to war, doesn't mean that war is your first instinct, right? You know, Trump said war is not my first instinct. It's not his first instinct. He tried to negotiate with these guys. He tried a diplomatic solution, but you have to have the credible threat of war, and you have to be willing to use your military assets to take evil off the table. And comparing this, you know, basically the case this piece makes is that this is on the same, you know, this war is just an extension. Now he's gone back to the same, you know, old policies that he used to criticize. No, what he criticized was forever wars, was wars that were rudderless and aimless and reckless, that blazed the path of destruction. This is much more of a surgical action done with overwhelming force, minimizing U.S. casualties, as Victor Davis Hanson pointed out, and making a positive change and not remaining there. There's no evidence whatsoever that this is going to be some kind of forever war, because it's been going on for a couple of weeks. As Trump said the other day on Air Force One, he said, look, if we have to endure a spike in oil prices for a couple of weeks or 2 months, that's a very small price to pay. That's not a forever war. That's not a 20-year forever war. And the hysterics on the right about what this is are coming, you know, it's almost like they're behaving like a traumatized, you know, person who you know, blows things out of proportion because of some trauma. So yes, Iraq and Afghanistan were terrible, and they decimated a whole generation of Americans who went off to fight for a war that seemed to have no purpose and no meaning and no end. So therefore, every single conflict in the world is seen through that lens, as though it's a repeat of the same thing. It's not. It has nothing to do with it. And it will make the world a better place. It will make oil prices more stable, probably lower in the end of the day. Yes, it will take some time to get this thing done right. It's like surgery. You know, imagine, it's like if these people witnessed a surgery, they would say, oh my gosh, look at this. This guy has a knife and he's cutting this person. He's attacking him. Well, of course, you have to cut the person open. But it's gonna mean they're gonna be in bed for a while. It's gonna cause them pain. Yes, that's called recovery. That's what this is like. There's this narrow-minded, infantile blindness to the fact that there are difficult things that need to be done in the world. And President Trump knows the difference between a forever war and a war that has a beginning and an end, and it's going to be done quickly. And part of the way you do it quickly is with overwhelming force. And the inability of these people to see that, what they're blinded by, whether it's just an anti-Israel bias or it's the trauma of the actual forever wars, or it's a sympathy for the enemies of America. I'm not exactly sure what's motivating these people. Some of the motivations are good. They've just been taken too far. Like, there has to be an emphasis on domestic issues. Trump is doing great on domestic issues. Yes, this war has an impact on prices temporarily, but he's doing great on domestic issues. He has been doing great on domestic issues. Why don't you trust him? And that's the big question mark. Why don't these people on the right, like the people at the American Conservative, who are big Trump supporters, why don't they trust President Trump to handle this in a way that's different? What are they not seeing? All right. I've gone on enough on this point. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please drop a comment below. Please like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. And thank you very much for watching and for helping grow the channel. God bless you.